Squat belly up.
This is the game. It's cat and mouse.
Smoked a turkey. Yes. He is down. He is freaking down.
Said he shot an absolute giant.
Fall obsession, baby.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Fall Obsession podcast episode. I am your host once again this week, Sam Thrash with Fall Obsession, and I am joined this week, finally, once again, by my good buddy, our media production manager, Nick Powell. What's going on, Nick?
Hey, what's going on, Sam? Looking forward to the podcast. It's been a minute since I've been on here, huh?
I know it's a weird feeling I'm glad that we've had the opportunity, to have guys the past couple of weeks like Drew and Rob and Nathan and get those guys in here because they had some awesome stories and made for some awesome episodes with us. But man, I miss podcasting with you, man. It's fun.
I know. And something that's even more weird is that we're podcasting over the phone.
I know. So for you guys that are new to listening to the podcast or new to following Fall Obsession, if this is one of your first ones to listen to, or even if it's not, Nick and I have done a good chunk of the podcast together, either with a third person or not, and we always meet up and do them in person because we have the luxury of living a little closer to each other than anybody else on our staff. And so we, like I said, we normally meet up, but man, June has just been crazy. I don't know about you, but it has just been crazy.
Oh, man, I've had to pick up a second job. Well, not had to. I kind of wanted to, but I was blessed with a second job. We'll say that.
Yeah.
And it's been pretty hectic. Time at home has been slim, so every chance I get to spend some time with the family, I like to take advantage of it. I'll be posting some of that on our new series off season. So
yeah, absolutely.
Heads up for that.
Yeah. Off season's a good series. You guys should check it out. It is, like Nick said, kind of showing some of the stuff that our guys have been working on at home, especially given everything that's going on in the world right now. Just to kind of give you guys some insight into what we've been up to. But June's just been a crazy month, and because of that, there's been several times where we're trying to throw a podcast episode together really quick to make something happen for you guys and keep publishing that consistent content for y'all. And that being the case, Nick and I are on the phone today instead of meeting up in person. So that's what you got.
Yep.
So before we get into it, guys, as always, this podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Elite Archery. We are very grateful for our partnership with them. Larry Mack and all those guys over at the Outdoor Group have really done a lot for us and helped grow our brand and put quality products in our hands. We couldn't be more happy for our partnership with them. So if you guys get a chance, I won't spend too much time just ranting and raving, but if you guys get a chance, go check out Elite Archery on elitearchery.com. They have all their products, their brand products on there, including bows. So you guys can go and customize your bow. They got a bow builder. You can make it however you want. You can even order it from their website, have it shipped directly to you. And, of course, you can go check them out at your local dealer. That's what I always recommend. That way you have a chance to shoot it alongside other brands, compare it, and really form your own opinion about it. So if you get a chance, go check out Elite Archery and shoot one, man. See what you think. So, Nick, again, we're throwing together an episode for our listeners, but I honestly think we got a pretty cool topic here today.
Yeah.
And that is,
that
is preparing for bow season. You and I are both bow hunters, and we're at the end of June right now. Not a lot of people think about, bow hunting in the summer. Guys' minds are typically on scouting, fishing, doing other stuff, tournament archery, that kind of stuff. But this is honestly a really good time to start honing your skills and making sure that you're prepared for what's coming up in the fall for another successful bow season.
Yeah, it's incredibly important to be prepared for the upcoming season, because not only from a physical standpoint but also an ethical standpoint, you want to be ready. So I think this is a great topic to touch on, especially because right now we are in the prime time for prepping. So
yes,
this is when it needs to go down.
I completely agree. So the first thing that I kind of want to lead into the discussion with is the equipment. Obviously, your bow itself, your archery setup, whether that's a bow you've used in years past or even a new bow, and the importance of making sure that is ready to go. And I know there's some guys that shoot year round. There's some guys that pull their bow out a few weeks before season and shoot. And when the season's over, they put it back in the case, put it back in the closet, and they don't think about it until next fall. Not saying either one is right or wrong, but you have those, guys on one side, guys on the other, and anywhere in between. But I really feel like the more that you shoot in the off season, the better you're going to be, and rightfully so. It's kind of common knowledge, in my opinion. But
absolutely,
as far as tuning your bow and everything, and I'm just going to dive right in and tell guys kind of what I like to do with mine, and that is kind of July, August, that time window right there. I'm going to give my bow what I refer to as a deep tune, where I'm really going to dive in there. I'm going to go through every little detail of it, and I'm going to make sure that it is shooting absolutely perfectly. And then I'm going to go out there and I'm going to start shooting on the range. I'm going to start practicing at the distances that I'm looking to reach. And then probably one more time before I go back out right before the season starts, I'm going to do what I call a confirmation tune, which is just where I go out there, I just double check everything, I run it through paper just to make sure that everything's shooting good, and I'm golden. It's mainly just kind of reaffirming, giving me that confidence, as we enter the season, that my equipment's good to go.
Yeah, that's good advice. I don't have a whole lot of experience with tuning, but I will say that coming newly into tuning, or being a newcomer into tuning, I thought it was really cool that you could tune a bow, and I've said this before in a podcast, but that you could tune a bow to yourself. And so I think if you could make that, pulling that bow back and letting that arrow fly as comfortable as can be, man, I think get it as precise as it can be. And not only for your comfortability, but also for that animal.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know we talked about that in our previous podcast where we had Larry McCoy from Elite Archery on board. We talked a lot about tuning and a lot about stuff like that. And I encourage guys to go back and listen to that episode if you haven't already, because it really is a good episode, and Larry gives us a lot of good information, not just about Elite Archery, but just about bow hunting and your equipment in general. But what you say, that is a good segue into something that I was going to bring up kind of on this same topic, and that is bringing a new bow into the picture. Whether it's a brand new bow, like brand new model that's never been shot before, whether it's a new bow to you, whether you buy it used from somebody else. Like you said, Nick, these bows nowadays, you tune them to you, which means if you buy a new bow off the shelf or if you buy a bow from somebody else, regardless, it is not tuned to you. That's something that you have to go do or have done, and it's only going to make you a better shooter. You may very well be able to pick up somebody else's bow that's roughly or exactly the same draw length and shoot it and feel comfortable and be shooting pretty good. But that's not going to change the fact that that arrow may be coming out of that bow at an angle, because your torque, your grip is different, So that was the point I was going to make on new bows, was just whether it's a brand new bow, like I said, or a new bow to you, making sure that you go have that tune before the season starts, because it's very important that you do that, because that's only going to make your shot better when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And now I know, Sam, you said you want to do a deep tune. Why don't you dive in a little bit further for the listeners who aren't as familiar with tuning, of what a deep tune actually consists of?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I consider a deep tune is, like I said, going through every little detail. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start by checking my center shot. I'm going to make sure that my arrow rest is lined up with my string and the inside track of my cam. And I think when I've talked about tuning a little bit here and there in previous episodes, I've mentioned that it's very hard to describe some of this stuff without a visual, which is where videos come into play, and we have we have a lot of videos of our own, and we have a lot more coming up that are actually going to show this stuff that we're talking about. But I'm going to keep going, and you guys can take away what you can from it from a listening standpoint. But I'm going to make sure that my arrow and my arrow rest are lined up with my string, with the inside track of my cam, left to right. I'm going to make sure that it's level with the bow, up and down, and then I'm going to put it on a draw board, or to check the cam timing. Basically, I'm going to make sure that both of my cams and both of the stops on my cams, whether they're cable stops or limb stops, are hitting at exactly the same time. If you're drawing back and you're feeling like you have a spongy back wall, like it's squishy, it doesn't feel rock solid, one of the common things that you'll find is that one of your cams, one of your stops, is hitting before the other one, which is causing that sponginess, if you will. And to fix that, you typically need a bow press, you typically need some twists brought in or taken out of a cable. This is where, if you don't know what you're doing, I recommend having a bow tech at a bow shop help you out with this. But you really want to, those are the first two things that I'm going to check to make sure that everything is lined up and shooting correctly, because if either one of those two are out, then I could spend hours at a paper tuning rack trying to figure out what the problem is and not get anywhere. So after that, I'm going to shoot it through paper. I'm going to see what kind of tear I'm getting, and then I'm going to begin to adjust my bow depending on what I'm seeing, whether it's tail left, tail right, up or down. And if you guys take your bow into a shop to get it tuned, the local tech can show you guys what's going on. He can explain it to you a little better, again, with that visual. And again, videos on our pages help with this as well. But I'm going to shoot through paper, and I'm going to adjust accordingly. Now, different bows adjust different ways based on what kind of tear you're getting. Right now, I'm shooting the 2020 Cure from Elite Archery. And what's really cool about the Cure is that you can adjust for your tear without even using a bow press. Their new set technology is absolutely amazing. Nick and I have both witnessed this on multiple bows, that just a couple of turns with a little Allen screw is all you need to adjust that bow and customize it to you. And again, we have videos on our pages. Elite has videos on this to explain what we're talking about. I'm not really going to dive in any more than that in a podcast, because it's very, very complex to just try to verbalize it, I feel like.
Right, yeah, I agree. And Larry, in our podcast with Larry, he brought up a cool story where they took one bow on a hunting trip, and there was another gentleman there with him who he was hunting with, and this guy used that cure to kill. Like, they set it to where it was comfortable for him. The draw length and everything was comfortable to him. He went out, killed him a buck with it, and then they brought the bow back that night. Larry tuned it to him right there in the field, just using an Allen wrench. And he went out the next day and killed him a mule deer with it. And so I thought that was, and that just goes to show how cool that cure is, and how easy that Elite made it for guys like us to tune it right there in the field.
Yeah, it is absolutely amazing. So anyway, that's kind of what I look for when I'm talking about a deep tune, is breaking everything down, every little last detail, to make sure that when I go out there at the range and I start practicing, that I have no doubts in my equipment, the same as I want in the field. There are no doubts in my equipment, and I can truly work on my own ability to shoot, my own form and follow through, and everything that I'm looking for myself as an archer, without having to worry about my bow itself. So that's the idea in my mind behind a deep tune.
Awesome, that's good stuff. So once you get everything tuned up and ready to go, now it's time to sight it in, right?
Now it's time to sight it in, and especially if you make a lot of adjustments, even if you shot the same bow the year before, if you make a lot of adjustments, or your bow is really out of tune and needed some help, you're probably going to have to resight some of your pins in, and it varies depending on the sight that you have, exactly how in-depth that process is going to be. Me personally, I have a CBE hybrid. It's a it's a 5-pin sight with a slider on it. So basically, I'm sighted in 20 through 60 yards, and then if I'm shooting at a target farther than 60 yards, I can move my slider to the exact yardage that I'm shooting, and my bottom pin will adjust to that. Again, a complex thing to talk about, but if my bow is just a little bit off, I could be changing a lot of things with a complicated sight like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So when you're sighting in, and this is kind of segueing into the next portion of this discussion, and that is as far as preparing yourself for what you're going to be doing, preparing yourself for the ranges that you're typically going to be shooting, the environments you're typically going to be in, angles, elevation, all that kind of stuff comes into play. I know for me, I have had a big push in the last couple of years to get more into Western hunting, hunting pronghorn up in Montana. And Nick, I know that you're going to be, hopefully, we're still waiting on the draw results, but hopefully you're going to be, hopefully we're all going this year, including you, for the first time. So
I know I'm stoked about it, man. I can't wait.
But, and I think that you might be able, and I know that, granted, we just got done talking about, how busy June has been, and obviously with everything that's been going on, it's been hard for us to get out there and practice a whole lot lately. We hope that in the very near future we can, we definitely need to, but I also thought this would be something cool that you could kind of talk about, Nick, because this year, you're going to be introduced to a whole new animal with a new bow in your hand, a new bow for you. And you're going to kind of start working toward being able to take on those longer ranges that we're talking about. So I thought that it might be a good idea to get kind of your perspective and some things that, like I said, I know we haven't really actually gotten to physically dive into it out there on the range yet, but maybe talk about kind of what your thoughts are as you're looking ahead to this and some things that you're thinking about right now.
Yeah, so when I started my bow hunting journey, it was mainly because down here in Texas, we don't have a whole lot of public land, wide open spaces to go out and try and spot and stalk things. So what we do mainly is stand hunting, or whether it be a ground blind or a tree stand or a tripod, we're gonna sit there, and we're gonna let those deer come in to 10, 15, 20 yards to where we can get a good shot on them. And so just the thought of having to take a shot at an animal that I've never even seen in person before at maybe 60, 70 yards is super intimidating, which is why I'm actually taking a lot of advice from this podcast as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty intimidating to think that you're going to walk out there, get as close as you can, which as close as you can might be 80 yards, and to actually take a shot with a bow at 80 yards is it's intimidating, but I'm looking forward to the whole process, the setting the bow up, putting the new equipment on, getting it tuned specifically to me, and getting it dialed in. And then just perfecting that shot.
Yeah. What kind of bow are you going to be running this
year,
Nick?
I'm going to be running a Ritual. It's an Elite Ritual, and 35, and I'm looking forward to just getting that thing decked out and ready to rock and roll, so I can put a old pronghorn on the ground, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, get you a speed goat on the wall.
Yes, that's what I was trying to think of, was speed goat, but I couldn't think of it.
No, man, and giving it, advice for you, advice for our listeners that are in this same boat. If long range is that next challenge, if long range is that next step that you're looking to take to toward a new experience that you're about to have, or a new challenge you just want to take on, the biggest thing is going to be getting your basics and your fundamentals down, because that shooting at 20, 30, 40 yards and being consistent there and really perfecting your form, your follow through, all that stuff is going to make it a lot easier, make a huge difference when you finally step up to those longer range, those 60, 70, 80 yard shots that Nick's talking about. So, and I know that you and I, Nick, are going to get out there on the range together. We're going to start working on this stuff. We're going to start shooting, and I by no means am calling myself an expert. I haven't shot a whole lot of long range in recent months, so I'm going to be having to go through it with you, to get ready for this year. But I'm looking forward to it, man, because it's going to be really fun, and I know that you're really going to enjoy seeing that progress from when you first start and you're shooting at a bale at 70 yards and you're nowhere near a kill zone, and by the end of it, you're putting all your arrows in a softball-sized group down there, man, at 80 yards. It's going to be freaking awesome.
That's definitely the goal. And then that cherry on top is going to be when those draw results come out, we all get drawn.
Hey,
and then we're all going to Montana in October.
Don't jinx us, man. Don't jinx us.
Hey, I'm just speaking it into existence is all.
I sure hope so, man, because I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hoping that we get it.
Yeah, me too.
So, again, we're talking about long-range shooting in reference to Western hunting. And Western hunting, Nick and I have a pronghorn hunt that we're hoping to go on. But Western hunting could be elk hunting, it could be mule deer hunting, it could be a bunch of other stuff that maybe you guys have on your bucket list or on your radar this year. Right now for Nick and I, it's just pronghorn. I really hope that in future years we can add elk and mule deer to that list. That would be awesome. But it's applicable to all those pursuits right there, guys. And talking about challenges, because long range is one challenge. There can be other stuff that you guys are wanting to work on depending on your environment or your level. Examples being shooting from elevation, even something as simple as that, or shooting from a sitting position or a ground blind, that kind of stuff. All those are things that should not be taken for granted, even if you've done them before. It's a really good thing to be able to practice what you know, practice what you are anticipating your environment is going to be, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Sam, because I know last year when we went down to San Angelo for our management hunt, for our staff hunt, sitting in the ground blind, a lot of the time we were sitting in the ground blinds hunting with our bows. And so being comfortable enough to, in a seated position, be able to pull that bow back and make a clean shot is completely different. Because I don't know about you, but I know when I go out on the range, I'm standing, my feet shoulder width apart, kind of angled towards the target, and that's like the most comfortable position to shoot a bow. I think that is applicable to everybody, and so that was a huge difference for me. And that's something that I regrettably say that I didn't plan for. Luckily, I'm in well enough physical shape where I was able to make it happen last year. But that was something that I didn't even cross my mind before we went to that San Angelo hunt, was having to sit down and take a shot. And so luckily I was able to make it happen. But exactly what Sam said, if you know what shots you're going to be taking, whether that be from a kneeling position, a sitting position, up in an elevated stand, shooting down at a pretty steep angle, take those shots prior to going out there, and that way you can perfect that shot when the time comes, because we all know we get buck fever no matter whether it's a doe or a turkey. Your heart's going to be pumping, you're going to be breathing fast, you're going to have to calm yourself down. So just being able to be more as comfortable as you can be making those difficult shots.
Absolutely. And another thing to think about too, and as you get closer to the season, I do not really recommend this, but I'll touch on it briefly. If you guys are going out there right now, June, July, to fill feeders or check your food plots, plant or set up stands, do stuff like that, especially like right after you put up a stand is a good time to do this. But take you a block target out there. Take your bow with you. Put your stand up, set your block target out there, and just shoot a few arrows through it. Just shoot from your actual stand in the actual scenario that you're going to be hunting in. I mean, that can make the world of difference of knowing, okay, in my tree stand, if I I need to be careful about this branch. I might want to cut this branch off because it's going to get in the way. Or in your ground blind, I need to sit farther back, to make sure that I have enough room and I don't bump or shoot through my blind, stuff like that. That's stuff that you want to think about ahead of the time and not deal with that in the moment, So
Right.
So that's always a good thing to work on, and then also go ahead and range in your setups. I am of the opinion that a hunter should always be prepared to range in the field and to adapt to the range that his target is at. I feel like that makes you a better hunter, but if you are hunting a specific place all the time, then why not know your ranges and practice at those ranges? Because if you have a target at 34 yards, you may not have a pin for 34 yards. So you need to be able to practice, and this goes into a whole nother topic, but practice at those oddball distances so that you know where you need to hold your pin in order to get an accurate shot at a range of 34 yards, stuff like that. Because I know for me, with my bow, it varies, and it's going to vary for everybody, which is why you have to practice. But I know that, like, using that 34-yard number, for example, if I have a target at 34 yards, I'm still going to use my 30-yard pin. That is me and my bow, and knowing how my bow shoots and how my arrow flies. But if I back up to 37 yards, I know that I'm going to be using my 40-yard pin, because it's how my bow shoots and how I shoot that bow. And it's weird. It sounds crazy if you've never heard of it before, but those oddball ranges, man, they can mess with you if you don't know your own equipment.
Yeah, I completely agree. One more thing that we can touch on is the difference between field tips and broadheads, because I know Slick Trick makes quite a few different types of broadheads, and I know a lot of them come with a practice broadhead that you can use in order to practice with. It's kind of in the name.
Yeah.
But try and shoot a few shots with that practice broadhead to make sure your arrow is flying the same as it does with a field tip, because there's a lot of factors that go into how that arrow is flying, and something as small as changing the tip on your arrow can make a whole world of difference.
Yes. I always recommend testing your broadheads, field testing your broadheads before you go out there. And Nick is right. Most manufacturers provide, especially mainly with the expandable heads, they provide a practice head to shoot through your bow. And I know that there's a lot of different opinions about practice broadheads running around out there, because in reality, and I'm not trying to knock any manufacturer out there, but in reality, they are built different than the actual broadhead themselves. And this is what guys don't like to hear, and I'm being brutally honest here, but if you truly want to know how that broadhead is going to fly, you're going to shoot the actual broadhead. You're going to sacrifice one of those broadheads in that pack to be your practice head, and you're going to shoot the actual broadhead. And broadheads are expensive, man. I get it. Not a lot of guys want to do that, and if you can't do that, then you can't do that. But that is the most accurate and the best way to be able to fine-tune your broadheads. And the way that they make broadheads now, they're really, if your bow is tuned properly to you and your whole setup is exact, and that includes your arrow spine, your arrow weight, and the way that your arrow's fletched, like down to all those last details, if it is correct, there should be no difference between your broadhead and your field tip. And guys are going to argue me on that. There's guys that are going to hear me say that in this podcast and are going to disagree. And I understand your opinion, and I understand where you're coming from, believe me. But I truly believe that if everything is proper, there should be no difference. And it does depend on the quality of broadhead. I also believe that there are good brands and bad brands out there, and I'm not going to knock anybody. But if you're shooting a good quality broadhead, then there should be no issues. And I'm, of course, going to recommend our friends over at Slick Trick. And you guys are going to say it's because we're sponsored by them. yes, we are sponsored by them, but we would not be sponsored by them if we did not truly believe in their products.
100%.
And you can take that with a grain of salt. You can take my word for whatever it's worth for you, but we at Fall Obsession would not associate ourselves with a company if we did not believe in the products that company produces. I will say that. But anyway, we did a broadhead test last year with the Slick Tricks, and you can go out there and watch videos, watch tests where guys shoot a field point and then they shoot a broadhead at 20, 30 yards, and everything is right next to each other. Well, we did that. We did a 20-yard shot with a Slick Trick Raptor Trick, which is their expandable head. And we did it at 20 yards, and it was on the money. But we took it farther. We went back to 50 yards and did the exact same thing, and the arrows were no farther apart than they were at 20, comparing a field tip to the broadhead itself. So if you guys have doubts, whether it's Slick Trick, and you can go watch that video that I'm talking about on our YouTube page, or it's another brand of broadhead, you can go out there and you can find videos and look at reviews and actually watch guys shoot these broadheads if you want to see what other guys' opinions are before you go spend the money or sacrifice the broadhead yourself to try it. Again, I'm always going to recommend that you try it with your bow and your setup, but like I said, if it's a good quality head and everything is working appropriately and is tuned in, then you should have no issues.
Well, Sam, I know we talked a little bit earlier about challenging yourself and trying to achieve those challenges. I think that's really important to set goals for yourself.
Yes.
Whether that be yardage, whether that be poundage, whether that be the animals you want to hunt, or whether it be your physical fitness, depending on which animal you want to hunt. Because I know it takes a lot more physical fitness to go to Colorado and hike into the mountains and hunt an elk than it does sitting down here like we do in Texas sitting in a blind.
That is a very good point, and making sure that you are prepared for what you're about to take on. Because, it's exactly what you just said. Down here in Texas or in the southern area or anywhere really where you have stand setups and you hunt out of blinds, tree stands, that kind of stuff. Your longest hike is from your truck to your stand, and then from your stand to go recover your animal. That's the majority of the walking that you do. But if you are,
right,
and I'm sending this as a warning to you too, if you're going out west and you're hunting these animals that move around and that you're having to literally chase on foot, it's a lot different, man. It is a lot different, and you have to be ready for it. And I know you're up for the challenge and that you're ready to go. But even for me, I the last 2 years I felt ready, and the second year more ready than the first. And both times I got my butt kicked, and I'm certain that it's going to happen again. And I'm not trying to brag or pump my chest out. I'm not in bad shape. I definitely could be better, but I'm not in bad shape. So, it does not take a lot to knock the wind out of you out there in the West, I feel like, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said earlier, I'm as much of a listener to this podcast as I am a provider. So,
man,
I'm taking all the advice I can get.
Yeah, and I'm going to rabbit trail off of that because that is a good point, man. Because, this podcast, it's for everybody. It's not just us trying to tell y'all how we do stuff or giving y'all, trying to throw knowledge at you. We like hanging out. We like sitting down, having a conversation, and talking about this stuff. So we like to share that with you, but also we learn just as much from these as you guys do. Because, like Nick's saying that he's listening to me talk about some of this stuff, some of these experiences that I've had and that he's about to have, and learning from him. I did the same thing the last 2 weeks. Talking with Rob and Nathan 2 episodes ago about hunting up in Canada and bear hunting. I've never been bear hunting in my life, but I learned a lot about it just from sitting with those guys for 45 minutes and talking about it. And then the same with Drew last week talking about elk hunting. So I really like being able to sit down and learn, like Nick's saying, just from our own guys, just from recording these podcasts. And I really hope that you guys as listeners enjoy it just as much as I do, because it's a blast. And just in the few weeks that we've been doing this, I've really learned a lot. And I know you can say the same, Nick.
Oh, absolutely. I concur 100%.
So kind of to begin wrapping up, because I know June's a busy month, and we both have stuff we still got to go do. But
Oh, yeah.
but to kind of wrap up, I want to turn it back around on that last comment you made about goals, because
Yeah.
setting goals for yourself is a great way to be able to mature yourself as an archer. And like Nick said, it can be anything, and you start out small, especially as you begin working your way and becoming a bow hunter, an archer. It could be poundage. You start out shooting 50, 60 pounds, and your goal is to get 65 or 70 pounds. You start shooting at 10, 20 yards, and your goal is to become consistent at 30. Little goals like that are what build you into being better later on. You're not going to go out there day one and shoot a 60-yard shot. And, I mean, you might get lucky, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be something that you're just going to go out there and just nail it day one,
Right.
So, and your goals should be fluid. Your goals should change as you mature. Okay, now I'm shooting at 30 yards. Now my goal is to be proficient at 40. Now I'm shooting 70 pounds. Now I'm going to start working better on those long-range shots, or I'm going to try to, really try to hone in on my form and figure out what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. I'm going to get a better sight, which is going to help me make better shots. Upgrading your equipment. All those are goals that you can set that will help you develop and help you become a better archer over time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So, guys, get out there, set some goals for yourself, and don't also try not to compare your archery journey to somebody else's. Somebody else is shooting 60, 70 yards consistently. Don't worry about it. Just do your thing, shoot what's comfortable for you, set some goals for yourself, and get out on the range and get her done.
That is a very good point. Don't compare or rate yourself against somebody else that is not at your same level. You are comparing and challenging and competing against yourself. You are trying to make yourself better, because you look down the range and see a guy shooting 80 yards, and you're like, man, I'm only shooting 20, and I'm not even ready for 30 yet. What how long is it going to take me to become like that guy? Why can't I be like that guy? Don't worry about that
Right.
guy. That guy has been doing it for 20 years, possibly, and
Exactly.
you're just starting. So challenge yourself, put yourself in that position to grow and mature, and every day go out there and try to be better than you were the day before.
It's good stuff.
So, Nick, as we wrap up, I know that you and I have recorded a lot of podcasts before. Like, a majority of the episodes have you and I in them. But one thing we started doing, like the past handful of episodes, is we've gotten more guests on the podcast, is we've asked them what we kind of have started calling our rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I have never asked you these rapid fire questions. So even though this is not your first time on the podcast, even though this is not a new thing for you, I'm going to ask you the rapid fire questions.
Okay, I'm down.
So, what is your favorite hunting and or outdoor memory to date?
Man, my favorite. Oh, I'm gonna have to go with the hunting memory. Was the last big buck I killed. It was actually a really cool story. So it's just at last light during the day that the sun is not far from being all the way down. And me and my dad were sitting in tripods right next to each other up on this hill, looking over this valley, and we got a feeder down in the valley, and we've seen some does and a couple of little bucks. And right at last light, we see that, and we're rifle hunting. This was back before my bow days, but we're rifle hunting. And so we see this buck, and he's running behind trees. We're trying to get, a good gauge on how big he actually is. And he looks big. And, cause he's, when you see a big deer, you just know he looks big.
Yeah.
Because he looks bigger than all the other ones,
Yeah.
So this guy looks big, and he's just running from our left to our right, chasing a doe. And so I'm able to find him in my scope, and I'm following him, and he's still just at a solid trot chasing his doe. And he gets my gun just starts pointing straight at the sun, and I'm starting. I have this. The sun is giving me this glare on my scope, and all I can see are his antlers and the outline of his body.
Oh.
And so my dad makes a little grunt call. He stops, and I put my crosshairs right behind his shoulder, pull the trigger, and this dude drops immediately. And that was the coolest feeling, was just watching that deer drop. And we went over there, and he was right where he was when I shot him. It was, and that deer is sitting on my wall right now. And so that's probably my favorite memory that I can think of.
Man, that's awesome.
It's the first one that comes to mind. Either there's so many, like I think everybody has said that. There's so many good memories, but that was the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
So.
First one that comes to mind is always a good one, and that's an awesome story. Not just your biggest buck ever, but that you got to share it with your dad too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, question 2: what is a bucket list hunt that you have not gotten to do yet?
Oh, there's a lot of those too.
I know you and I have talked about bucket lists before, and both of us have a long one.
Yes, they're both very long. But my number one bucket list hunt is an elk, and I'm not picky about where it's at, but I'd like a big 6x6 elk.
Heck yeah! Well, I too would share that. Maybe not my number one of all time, but it's definitely on my list as well. So
yeah.
I'm really hoping that maybe someday in the years very soon up and coming here that we might have the opportunity to do something like that. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I hope so.
So the last question that I always ask in the rapid fire is asking someone to give a piece of advice relative to the topic that we've discussed. However, I feel like a lot of advice has been given in this podcast, and this whole podcast is kind of revolving around advice.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'll kind of generalize it a little bit more, because you're relatively newer into bow hunting. Just a couple years in. What's been one of the biggest things you've learned up to now as a bow hunter, developing, and that a piece of advice relative to that you would give to somebody just starting out?
I think a great piece of advice would be to get in your repetitions, because that's one thing that made me more confident. And like my first bow that I just sold, I never had it tuned to me, but I could put that sucker on the money because I shot it over and over and over and over again. And so that is what I would say, is get out there, practice. And just like we said earlier, I'll put an emphasis on what we said earlier, is practice those shots that you are planning to take in the upcoming season, and practice them over and over and over and over again until it's second nature.
100% agree, for sure. Well, buddy, I appreciate you taking time out of your evening to record with me again. And even though we're not sitting across the table in person with each other, it was fun to get to hang out and talk to you over the phone.
Oh, every time we say it, I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's a great time every time.
Great time every time. Hopefully it stays that way. Guys, thank you all for listening. I hope, like Nick and I said, we learned from this podcast, and I hope that you guys are as well. I hope that you guys enjoyed it and got something out of it, because that's what it's all about. Whether it's a little thing or a big thing, we want people to learn stuff from what we're bringing. And if you guys have not had a chance to go back and listen to our previous podcast, we've been putting one out once a week. Who knows if it'll stay that way with as busy as our schedules are, but we were grateful that it has up to this point at least. So be sure to.
We're definitely gonna try our hardest to keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely. But all that is to say, go back and listen, because we got a lot of cool episodes that we've covered and topics we've covered previously. We've had some really cool special guests on here, including like I said, Larry McCoy from the Outdoor Group in Elite Archery. That's episode 14. If you guys want to go back and listen to that and dive a little bit more into the technical side of archery and tuning and all that, that is a great episode to go listen to. Be sure that you follow us on social media. Fall Obsession. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please do, because we put out a lot of awesome videos, a lot of stuff relevant to archery, and a lot of stuff we're talking about today is covered in those videos and or upcoming videos. We have a new series right now called Cure Your Obsession, where we're taking our other Nick. We got two Nicks on our staff. We're taking the other Nick Latham, and our marketing manager, Drew Tordick, who are brand new into bow hunting, never really shot a bow before. I know Nick is green, other Nick, that is. This is confusing. Nick Latham. He is green. So we're taking them from square one and building them into successful, proficient archers, and hopefully that series is going to lead all the way into the fall, where they will hopefully each kill a deer with their elite bows this upcoming fall. But we're breaking down everything. Every last detail of tuning, setup, shooting, sighting in, all that kind of stuff is in that series, so be sure that you guys go check that out. And also on fallobsession.com, fallobsession.com/podcast. On that page, we have a form on there where you guys can tell us what you think of our podcast. You can ask us questions, or you can suggest a topic that you would like us to cover in a future episode, and we'd be happy to do that as well. We really appreciate you guys following along, and of course, above anything, you guys are listening to this podcast, so please hit that follow and subscribe button. That way you get notified every time we release a new episode, and we'd really appreciate it. Nick, did I miss anything?
I think that's it, buddy. You nailed it, like you do every time.
I try. I feel like I stumble through it every week, but yeah, you guys keep listening to me, so I guess I
just keep stumbling.
Yeah, I guess I'll just keep
stumbling.
All right, guys. Well, we really appreciate you guys listening, like I said, and hopefully we will see you again next week for another episode of our Fall Obsession podcast.
See y'all later.